Good evening and welcome to the September 10th meeting of the Glendale City Council. May we have roll call?
Yes, council members Brotman,
Here.
Karpetian,
Here.
Kasakian,
Here.
Najarian,
Here.
Mayor Asatrian.
Here. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for the invocation.
Let us begin by acknowledging that we are standing on the indigenous lands of the Gabrielino Tangva people. As we gather today, let us reflect on our responsibility to serve our community with wisdom, integrity, and a spirit of collaboration. Let us ensure that every voice is heard, working with fairness and compassion in all that we do. As we make decisions today, may we be guided by justice and service, with a shared commitment to the well-being of our city and its people. Thank you.
Thank you. May we have your report, please?
Yes, the agenda for the September 10th, 2024 regular meeting of the Glendale City Council was posted on September 5th, 2024 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Great. And what's next?
Next are presentations and appointments. A, agenda preview for the meetings of Tuesday, September 17, 2024 by Assistant City Manager John Tartalian.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Next week, we have two meetings in the afternoon. The first will be a joint meeting of the Glendale City Council and Housing Authority with one item from Community Services and Parks, and that's the approval of the Glendale Homeless Action Plan. There will also be a special meeting of the City Council with one item from Community Development and Housing, and that is going to be seeking direction from Council regarding neighborhood services code enforcement efforts. The evening City Council meeting has several consent items. The first from Community Development regarding professional services agreement with Architectural Resources Group to prepare the East-West Glendale Historic Context and Survey, the North Glendale Historic Context Update and Survey, and surveys for the proposed Verdugo Woodlands and Cleveland Knoll Historic Districts. The next item will be from Glendale Water and Power, seeking Council's approval of participation in cooperative agreement, appropriation of funds received from the American Power Partners Association, and an amendment to the city's agreement with Inside Public Sector. The next consent items from Public Works, seeking approval of contract for some renovations at the former police building with respect to the elevator. Next item from City Attorney's Office, requesting a conflict of interest waiver and legal representation by Best and Krieger. And the final consent item will be from Public Works, seeking approval of an award of a professional services agreement for public outreach regulatory compliance. Two final items that evening under action. The first will be from Community Development regarding follow-up on programs related to the rental rights discussion. And the last item will be from Public Works regarding an update on the bus stop improvement program.
Thank you. And what's next?
Next, I'd like to skip to item F per council request.
Yes.
Item F is proclamation designating the month of September 2024 as Suicide Prevention Month and designating the week of September 8th through 14th, 2024 as Suicide Prevention Week.
Great. So this is the first time we're doing this proclamation, and we have the Managing Director of the National Alliance on Mental Illness that's here to accept the proclamation. Welcome. Hello. I'm going to read just parts of the proclamation, and then you'll have an opportunity to say a few words. Whereas September is nationally recognized as Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, dedicated to raising visibility for mental health resources and suicide prevention services. Whereas anyone can call or text 988 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, to receive support during a suicidal crisis, mental health emergency, or substance abuse and use-related crises. Now, therefore, I, Elena Satrian, Mayor of the City of Glendale, proclaim this week of September 8th through 14 as Suicide Prevention Week, and the month of September 2024 as Suicide Prevention Month in Glendale. and urge Glendale residents to take the time to ask about the well-being of their family, friends, and neighbors, to genuinely convey their appreciation for their existence by any gesture they think appropriate, including a simple smile, a telephone call, a message, a handshake, or a hug, which can go a long way towards helping save a life. The proclamation is much longer, but I wanted to use this opportunity for you to also talk about maybe a little bit of the services as well as assistance that's out there for individuals that may be having a hard time.
Yeah. I really appreciate, Mayor Satrian, that you are highlighting this and taking this opportunity to bring up suicide awareness and suicide prevention. We at NAMI Glendale, as long as we are here, we're always here to help you if you have someone in your life or you yourself are experiencing any mental health condition, including psychosis as well as suicidality. So you can come to us. We have two family support groups every single week. We also have support groups for people who are living with a mental health condition. Everything is free. And just like you said, Mayor Asatrian, it's really important to reach out. If you see somebody who's experiencing something, let them know that they really do matter to you. And you can give them our number, you can give them our website, and find a free support group at any point.
I can speak from personal experience with friends that have gone through a difficult time where, especially even when they are reaching out at that moment, when you are not equipped to be the person to handle that. I can attest to one simple time where I just needed to show up and sit there while we got the assistance. And I know for family and friends that can also be a scary moment for themselves because there's a lot of responsibility in that moment. And so, but I do think that when I think back to some of those days, I think about me particularly trying to find resources on my way too. And so I think the national 988 number is a great resource that's available 24/7 for individuals and for family and friends. And I think each of our communities and families have seen tragedies that could have been avoided. And it really takes just simple steps in both equipping yourself with resources and providing the resources to those that are in need. So thank you for your work. I'm going to come down for a photo unless any of my council colleagues have comments.
Yeah, thank you for initiating the proclamation. I think it would be good if you guys get in touch with other organizations in Glendale. Our former mayor, Carl Raggio's daughter, Ms. Raggio, is involved in an organization that helps veterans. There's, as we all know, every 21 minutes a veteran is committing a suicide, and they had events in Glendale and Pasadena, not on my watch, that we took turns on 24 hours for 24 hours a day. I don't know, it was 2 or 3 days. It was an event to raise awareness and funds for them. And the bridge in the old Colorado Bridge in Pasadena is called the Suicide Bridge, and they had the most suicides committed by veterans from that bridge. So we patrolled that bridge for 3 nights. I think it's a great organization that all the organizations in Glendale can come together and share resources and help each other.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, we definitely do. And we work closely with Dee Dee Hirsch, who answers the 988 line as well. And we work with veteran organizations as well. And I really appreciate you bringing that insight and your experience to attention.
And if folks wanted to reach out to you, what's the best way?
I would say the best way is to go to our website. It's namiglendale.org. That's NAMI, glendale.org.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, all right. I'll come down for a photo and give it to you. All right, and next?
Next is item 3G, proclamation designating the month of September 2024 as Library Card Sign-Up Month.
And we have the Assistant Director of our Library Arts and Culture, along with a number of library staff and possibly a representative from the GLAC Trust.
No trust tonight, but
Okay.
we've got our staff here with us.
Well, we have trust every day.
We do.
Welcome. I'll read a couple of lines, but I'm going to keep it short because I think it's important for you to also highlight some of the things that people, when they think about libraries, they don't think that these things exist. And I know that our libraries are full of resources and cool spaces for different age groups. So I want you to also use that opportunity to highlight. Whereas the Glendale Library and Arts and Culture Department will celebrate National Library Sign-Up Month in September 2024. Whereas libraries assist people of all ages in navigating life's complexities, offering access to research, information, and government services that enhance productivity and fulfillment. Whereas libraries uphold democracy by promoting civic engagement and the free exchange of information and ideas for all. Now, therefore, I, Elena Satrian, Mayor of the City of Glendale, proclaim September 2024 National Library Card Sign-Up Month in Glendale and invite Glendale residents to visit the Library Arts and Culture in person or online to sign up for a free library card.
Good evening, Mayor Satrian, council members, and city staff. It is a pleasure to reintroduce myself to you all. I'm Lesa Canenio-Pua Palaio-Lozada, the now acting director of Glendale Library Arts and Culture. And along with me, I have our passionate and enthusiastic staff, and of course, our giant library card. We are very grateful to share this space with you all to honor National Library Card Sign-Up Month. With over 120,000 library card holders in Glendale Library Arts and Culture, a library card is one's access to the world through every stage of life, no matter who you are, where you're from, or where you're going. And we see the transformation that a library card can offer. One of my favorite stories is of a little girl named Sarah, name changed for privacy, and her grandmother. Sarah was very shy and not as verbal as might be developmentally expected for her age, and she would usually spend story time with her head buried in her grandmother's chest. Despite that, they came week after week, and one day during our regular opening song, Shake Your Sillies Out, Sarah's head and, well, frankly, her whole body shot up and she started singing with us at the top of her lungs. Her grandmother and I both looked at each other with tears in our eyes, noting the gentle yet transformative experience for both child and caretaker. Stories like this occur every day in our libraries and not just for children. The library is for all ages, whether you are a teen looking to make some new friends in our Dungeons and Dragons group, someone of any age looking to learn life and sustainability skills like sewing, or an adult looking for mental health resources during our meditation and wellness programs, as well as, of course, our books, music, movies, and online resources covering the gamut, available both virtually and in person at our 8 locations. We have something for everyone, and we invite all of you, if you don't have it already out there already, to come get the most valuable card in your wallet, your free library card. And USD students out there who I'm sure are watching at home, your student library card is already waiting for you and is assigned to you. You just need to use it. So thank you for your support and this honor this evening through this proclamation. We can't wait to help all of you open up the world of possibility in the library.
Thank you. And you have a new bookmobile that's going around town?
We do have a new bookmobile. It is still getting ready to be fully let loose on the town, but we're hoping to have that ready to go early next year, and we'll be visiting all sorts of community institutions across town.
Yeah, and I think one of my favorite rooms that I think a lot of people don't know about is the recording studio, where people can go and not just, they can also record for podcasts and whatnot, right? If you can briefly speak to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So our sound space is going to be relaunched in November. It's undergone an entire transformation. We're going to have state-of-the-art technology to record podcasts, music demos, videos, we'll have a green screen, we'll have sound mixing equipment, and so that'll be our sound space. And also debuting at the end of November is our refurbished teen space, as well as our children's space. So we're really excited to invite everyone to that unveiling November 23rd.
Very cool. Did you have a comment? Sure.
So, first of all, congratulations. Library is an amazing place. It was one of my favorite places growing up, especially in Glendale, where we have amazing libraries and library staff. So for anyone who is afraid to go to the library because they may have a few overdue books and some fines that they've accumulated, can you tell us about the policy that we have in the city today that would maybe encourage folks to come back to the library?
I sure can. So first of all, don't be afraid, because we have friendly faces just like these ones, smiling and ready to help you at any moment. But also, if you have overdue books and fines, don't worry about that, because we are a fine-free library to make sure that anyone can access their materials, no matter if they were a couple of days late. As long as we get the books back, your fines are cleared.
Awesome.
Thank you
so
for that
much.
lead up.
I did not know that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think when people think library cards, if you're a busy person and sometimes, your mind's in, somewhere else, you forget to return them. And I think most people still associate library cards with perhaps overdue fines. I just want to make sure everyone knows that if you have fines or if you check out a book and you forget to turn it in right on the exact day it's due, there's no fines in Glendale. And that was adopted, I think, March of this year?
I
Or
believe
when
it's
was
been 2
it?
years
2 years,
now.
yes, that's
Yeah.
right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you for your service. I'll come down. Drive around with it. Thank you very much. All right. Next item.
Next are consent items, including minutes. The following are routine and may be acted upon by one motion. Any member of council or the audience requesting separate consideration may do so by making such request before motion is proposed.
Great.
I'll move the consent calendar if there's nothing being pulled.
I'd like to pull 4B, please.
Okay.
Okay, we're pulling 4B. Do I have a motion to move the remainder of the
Yeah,
consent?
I'll move the balance of the consent
I'll
calendar.
second.
All right, roll call?
Council members Brotman,
Yes.
Garpetian,
Yes.
Kasakian,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Mayor Asatryan.
Yes. All right, let's take on 4B.
4B is community development regarding City of Glendale Open Street event, May 31st, 2025, moved from August 27, 2024. 1, motion authorizing the city manager to execute funding agreements to receive grant funding for B Street Smart Glendale Avenue Open Street event, B Street Smart event from the Los Angeles County Metropolitan Transportation Authority. 2, motion authorizing the city manager to execute a professional services agreement with Community Art Resources for the implementation and management of the B Street Smart event on May 31st, 2025.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is really some good news for those of you out there who think for one reason or another that I'm anti-bike. That's not true, and I'm very happy to announce that Glendale was one of just 4 cities that obtained full funding for their Open Streets event. This will take place on May 31st. We used to call them ciclovias. That's a brand name. This event is by the Community Arts Resources, and it will essentially create the largest Class 1 bike lane that this city has ever seen by closing down Glendale Avenue from, I think, Doran down to Los Feliz, and it'll be completely car-free. There'll be security officers, police, et cetera, at each intersection to make sure no car wanders on. It'll be bicycles, skateboards, scooters, roller skates, walkers, joggers, with plenty of fun and food along the whole path. So I'm happy that this is coming to Glendale. We had one in 2017 along Brand Boulevard. Brand Boulevard was a lot of fun. And this actually started at Metro in 2013 with a motion by then Mayor Villaraigosa, myself, and a few other directors, and this has continued now since then, about 11 years, and it looks like it's going to keep going forward. So we'll give you reminders as we get up to May 31st, but it should be fun, and you might even be able to catch me on a bicycle on that day.
What about rollerblades?
Rollerblades are good too.
All right.
Anything that's not a car. So I'll move the item, Madam Mayor, if there's no other.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
And
Madam
before
Mayor,
we
we
hear
have
up-
a card.
I'm happy to second it.
Great. Okay, we'll take the speaker.
Council members, my name is Mike Mohill. You know, about a month ago, I was in Hollywood, and I got caught up on Hollywood Boulevard, and I couldn't drive my car. And I had to take Franklin Avenue because they were having this bicycle thing. I didn't know anything about it till now. And it went on for hours. And everybody was using Franklin Avenue, and they were, pardon my expense, they were all pissed off because Hollywood Boulevard is a main street. Now you want to take Glendale Avenue, a major street in Glendale. What's the alternative for someone where I live, Glen Oaks Canyon, to get into the city and go down to San Fernando Road? I'm in trouble. I'm going to be like these people who are saying, hey, Mr. Nigerian, don't walk out on me. You know what I'm talking about. This is not a good idea for Glendale or any place. You're trying to appease the bicycle people, but don't. Stick to your guns. Glendale is a car society. We don't need bicycles. And like I said, I suffered in Hollywood about a month ago. I didn't know what it was. But it was from Vermont all the way to the freeway on Hollywood Boulevard. I got out of my car and I said, what's going on out here? I can't use Hollywood Boulevard. I said, oh, this is ciclovia, Spanish word. Wonderful. Then it not only was Franklin busy that day, so was Sunset. So tell me, Mr. Nigerian, if I can't use Glendale Avenue on that particular Saturday, what do I do? Stay home? You gonna airplane me around the city? Bicycle? Nah. I like my car. So, you know, some people like this event, but it's not for everybody, and you disrupt the whole city. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, we have another card on this item.
Okay, and then we're not taking any more cards after the first speaker is done on any of the items. Thank you.
The speaker is Herbert Milano.
Mayor Acetra, members of the City Council, my name is Herbert Molano. This particular item is an item of which I have a lot of experience with because I travel a lot, particularly to Colombia, where this idea originated many years ago. And it is one of the most amazing experiences if you ever get to see this. In this case, they have it every Sunday between 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock. And major thoroughfares are oftentimes divided. On one side are cars, on the other side of the boulevard is for bicycles and children and skateboards and runners. And it is an ongoing every single week. It connects the community, it creates vibrancy, and I think it's something that Glendale could actually profit from significantly by bringing communities together. We oftentimes talk about the division that there is between Armenians and non-Armenians and other segments of the society. This is the place to do it. And it is a dynamic, energetic, positive experience for the city. I truly not only encourage you to have it on this day, I encourage you to have it every month or every week, because it will also change the perspective of the culture that bicycling and running and being together as a community is an important mission of the city. I would invite you to go to Medellin, Colombia with me and experience what it is like. I wish I would have had the pictures prepared because I've always taken lots of pictures of that event. It's an amazing experience and it's something that would uplift the cities and create connectivity and create a more homogeneous city. I strongly support this and I hope that you can expand it. Thank you.
Okay. We have one more caller.
Yes, we have a caller. The call came in during the first comment. The caller is Kathy Jones. Kathy, you're on air. You have 3 minutes.
Hey there. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Great. I've never done this before. Thank you guys for being able to take calls. I just wanted to call in and support the Ciclavia-like event that y'all are planning. I'm super excited about hearing that. I've participated in those events in LA in the past, Eagle Rock, and I think I agree with the previous speaker. This could be a great thing for businesses along whatever path you guys choose. Every time I do those events, I end up popping into a cafe or restaurant afterwards or before. So yeah, for what it's worth, I definitely support that. I think the first speaker had a really great comment about, just being able to know ahead of time. So I think whatever y'all do, you just need to plan ahead, communicate a lot, make sure the whole city knows what's going on ahead of time.
Great. Thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second. May we have roll call?
Council members Brotman,
Yes.
Karpetian,
Yes.
Kasakian,
Yes.
Najarian, Mayor Asatrian.
Yes. And what's next?
Next are city council and staff comments.
Do my colleagues have any comments? Councilmember Garpetian?
Yes. Well, for the record, I'm in support of that open street event for next year. And also, when I was the mayor in 2017, we brought Ciclavia to Glendale. It was a fun event. And I just want to thank our police chief for yet another great community event that we had last Wednesday, to address members of the community's concerns about, everything that goes on, safety and security in Glendale. I want to thank you for being very precise and very professional, and a great presentation. And but many of our police officers were there, and they answered questions that people were asking. It was a great event. I think meetings like this will bring the community together, our law enforcement and the community together, and they get to know you. They get to know their chief and their staff and every other officer in Glendale. I think that was a great event. Thank you for that. And lastly, for the invocation, I want to ask our city clerk again to please have people of faith come in and do the invocations. And I got calls, not complaints, but I got calls that they're ready to come, but no one has approached them. So I know you guys are busy, but just organizing or scheduling a 3-minute invocation, it doesn't take that long. So at least every other week, I would like to have that. So, thank you.
Councilmember Garpetian, we've actually reached out, my staff has reached out to different faith institutions, and unfortunately, no one has been able to attend the past couple meetings, but we did have a number of folks who came and gave invocations, and I'm always ready to give invocations every council meeting.
Great. Okay. Do any of my other colleagues have comments?
Sure. Just want to take a moment to remind everyone that tomorrow marks an important anniversary in our nation's history. It's the commemoration of the tragedy that struck our country, our nation, on September 11th. And to commemorate those brave individuals and innocent lives that we lost, I believe there is a ceremony tomorrow morning at the police, in front of the police station at 7:15 a.m., as has been the tradition for a number of years now. I know that there used to be a parade that used to occur up in the La Crescenta area. That used to be a car parade that would go around to all the schools. This year, that's not being held. Individuals that were organizing it were not able to put it together, and for other reasons. So I hope that, you know, some folks will help commemorate this important day by attending tomorrow, or however, just take a moment tomorrow during your day to remember those lives that were lost. Also on on the consent calendar, I didn't want to pull it, but 4-H was our police department, which had applied for a grant and received $40,000 from the State of California Office of Traffic Safety for Motorcycle Safety and Education and Training Program. I think that's fantastic. Very important, especially as we talk about driving more safely, obeying the rules of the road. I would like to ask staff, perhaps the police department, from the same grant source to seek funding to help bring back some level of driver's education to our high schools that was eliminated in years past. I personally believe that one of the reasons why we are seeing reckless driving and incidents of accidents is because our public educational system took driver's ed out of the curriculum. It is not taught anymore, and I've mentioned this before. I'm willing to dedicate some funds, even from our own coffers, if we must, to this public school system to at least spend some time during the year teaching would-be drivers the appropriate way to behave when driving, respecting the rules of the road, respecting pedestrians, respecting bicyclists. So I just wanted to bring that up. I didn't want to take this item and connect it to that because I supported the item. I think it's great, but I'd like to ask staff to seek that funding as well as to see what we can do as a city to help educate young drivers. That is all, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Najarian, followed by Councilmember Brotman. And if we can please use the...
Unless you're going to talk.
Go ahead. No, you can go ahead.
So, thank you, Mayor. In accordance with Assembly Bill 1234, I'm announcing that this past weekend, Mayor Asaturian, and our city manager attended the California Contract Cities seminar held in Oceanside, California, and we had attended many classes on land use, health and wellness, the propositions facing us in November, security and safety, law enforcement. There were many, I probably just hit on half of them, but those are what I recall seeing. It was a well-attended seminar and also a good chance to reconnect with a council member and mayors of some of our neighboring cities.
Thank you. Two things. First of all, I want to give a shout out to Armin and Mary Kargohlanian. I hope I pronounced their name right. It's a tough one. They organized the Armenian Film Festival, which concluded yesterday, I believe, and it ran for 5 days, showing about 15 different films. Not all of them by Armenian directors, but all of them with some connection to Armenian culture. I attended 2 of the films. One of them called 1489, which was not an easy film to watch. It was about basically a woman's story of her younger brother who disappeared in action, missing in action during the Artsakh War. And she basically pulled out her mobile phone and started filming her family and the search for her brother, who ended up being killed in the fighting. It was difficult to watch, as I said, but it was very well done. And then I saw another one which was much more upbeat called The Last Repair Shop, which is a story of an Armenian man named Steve Bogmanian, who was in the audience, and he runs a music instrument repair shop that supports students at LAUSD, and it was really wonderfully done. So just want to give kudos to them for an amazing event, which I'm sure took a lot of effort to put together. The other thing I want to say is I want to acknowledge the difficult time that some of our residents have gone through over the last few days with the power outages around Tropico and Adams Hill. I can't imagine what it would have been like to be without power during this heat that we just experienced. There were many families who experienced outages, some pretty extended outages. And I just want to say, and I'm sure I'm speaking on behalf of all of us, that I'm sorry. And I think we will have some people from GWP coming up to talk about what happened. They'll tell the details, but from my perspective, the bottom line is our electric grid, and this is our distribution system. This is what gets power around to all the homes from the Grayson gas plant. That system is just not designed for the climate reality we face today. The high heat is stressing, and the usage levels when everybody's using their air conditioning is stressing the system in ways that it was not designed for. And I know we are upgrading it, and I know it's going to be a 10+ year project. It's going to take time, it's going to take money, but we are intending to bring the grid up to the requirements that we're going to be facing going forward. So I just wanted to mostly, I know we will give thanks to the GWP folks who are out day and night in the heat dealing with a transformer that went bad, but I also want to acknowledge the families that had to suffer through this. No, that's it.
All right. I know that our city manager, Mr. Gulanian, would like to make a few comments. So why don't you go ahead and then I'll do mine after yours.
Thank you very much, Mayor Sargent, member of City Council. As it was noted, this last few days we went through an unprecedented heat wave, and unfortunately, we had some ensuing power outages because of our old equipment, aged equipment, overheating and failure, and the only unit that we currently have in operation at Grayson Repowering. And we wanted to provide an update on the work that staff have done and the status moving forward. But before I turn it over to staff for an update, I wanted to extend my deep gratitude and appreciation, as it was stated, for the entire crew at GWP Electric, including dispatch, including engineering staff, but mostly our field crews who worked multiple long shifts in hot weather over 110 degrees to restore power to our residents as quickly as possible within their means, and truly appreciate their work and their dedication. So with that, I'll invite Scott Mellon, our Assistant General Manager of GWP, in charge of power, to give you a quick update.
Thank you for being here.
Good evening, council members and Madam Mayor. Yes, the last 6 days have been quite a ride. Somewhat reminiscent of the 10 days 2 years ago that we experienced over 100-degree weather for 10 days in a row. The one distinction being that for the 6 days that we experienced over 100 degrees, we actually hit a new all-time high for our load, peak load. We also didn't have any significant transmission issues outside of our system supply, so that was very helpful in getting energy into us. Majority of our resources external to our system worked quite well and were supplied in. LA actually, even though they had significant outages in their distribution system, didn't seem to have any major ones on their transmission, so that worked well. We did end up having one major issue with our only source of energy internal to our system, our number 9 unit. We had a loss of our main chiller on that unit, which reduced 45 megawatt normally output unit down to about 35 megawatts. At the time that it happened, luckily it wasn't at the peak. We were able to support what we could during that. And as a whole, you know, I join you in expressing my thanks to the IBW and for specifically power plant workers, line workers, electricians, anyone who had to do work at substations in the weather over the last few days. It was quite a bit of work for them. To the issue associated with Tropico, I know some of the issue, essentially it was transformer failure. Yes, the equipment at those locations and in general in our distribution system, they were working to transition to higher voltages from 4 kV to 12 kV. A lot of that equipment is staging right now to do that transition. That's what was going on at Tropico. It was actually in the process of being staged for transition over the next, I think, year. When we had the failure at the transformer, they had to do some jury rigging workaround in order to get that all tied together and have a functional transformer to tie things together. That's actually happening tonight. I think notices went out to the customer base. It's going to be happening between midnight and 4 a.m. So we can minimize any outages that might occur. If all goes well, it'd be a very limited outage, so most people won't notice. So everyone should be back come tomorrow morning. I will say I am more than happy to answer any questions, but I am looking forward to winter.
Go ahead, Councilmember Garbatyan.
Yeah, thank you. If we have 2 transmission lines, right? One in north, one in south, and they both they did well and no issues, right?
Right.
And if we had an issue with one of them, which is, I think it's 100 megawatt?
So we, Western, I believe, is a little over 100 megawatt flow, and we have 250 megawatt flow at Airway.
So if one of them had an issue, what happens at that time?
If we have to reduce our main interconnections with LA or to Burbank, then we have a significant impact on the ability to bring energy in, and we have to rely solely on picking up energy from our in-system generation. And like I said, that was in a derate mode, so we might have had to do systematic load shedding.
Systematic load shed, can you explain that in simple English? What does it mean? Does
Sure.
it mean rolling blackouts?
Right, it is a glorified way of saying rolling blackouts.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I'm just going to say thank you to staff. I know you've all been working overtime, and I join in Councilmember Brotman in apologizing to our residents. I will say that my own AC went out, but it turns out it was just a breaker. I ended up, I'm going to make our city manager's looking at me, but it was 80 some degrees in my apartment, and so I ended up crashing in my balcony a couple of nights ago, only to find out it was the breaker. And so I recognize the demand that was out there just across the board, because we couldn't even get anybody to come out to look at the AC. So I think on that note, the one thing I did want to mention, because I know some of the emails noted that you were in communication with LADWP for possibly buying energy.
Yes.
And then I think the one area I would highlight is if we are reaching that area of peak, for us to do the direct communication with our residents. I remember, I think it was like 2 years ago when we had that all-time high. I remember staff coming back and saying, we asked and our residents responded. And so how we utilize those moments to directly communicate, because just having overarching requests doesn't work. But reaching to our residents and business owners in different ways, asking them, or having specific asks, I think does work. So for us to kind of keep that in mind, and I don't want to get to a place where we're buying energy. I think last time we sold energy and we made money, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes, 2 years ago, we managed to find a way to do that, yes, but most of the system was crashing around us, and we were the ones staying up, so we were supplying support. And I will say, I echo your concern about, crying wolf. I think we have been proactive about requesting assistance from the community whenever it made sense.
Right.
Obviously, it made a lot of sense during the last 6 days. More so Friday and Monday. The weekend was, high temperatures, but the load was not as bad. So yes, we do try to be selective because we don't want to create a situation where people see the request on a consistent basis and then aren't really concerned about replying.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you again. And then just a couple of things that are on my list. Just a note that the Women's Equality Day event has been moved to September 25th. We postponed it due to the excessive heat. It was supposed to take place yesterday, but the event has been sold out. I think that those who had initially gotten a spot, if I'm not mistaken, have until September 13 to reconfirm attendance, after which time we'll open up the list if there's room for us to allow others to attend. And my understanding is that we are going to have the whole program be part of GTV6 and YouTube. So if you weren't able to get a spot, or if you don't end up getting a spot, there'll be opportunities for you to catch the information online and on GTV6. I think the other item is, I think a lot of us have been getting emails from residents about their utility bills, and specifically those that are on fixed income with the increase in the rates that came through, and obviously seeing what the temperatures are like these days, which require individuals to use AC. I know that our Glendale Water and Power was supposed to also look at, again, the public benefits programs, but I really would, given the realities on the ground with both the rate increase as well as the temperatures, looking at our current public benefit programs and looking at perhaps even temporarily moving some of the funding that's some proactive feel good to actually assisting our residents who are in dire need. I don't know how people are, covering their utility bills when they have to have the AC on and the rates are up. And so I would ask that we potentially look at all of our public benefit programs and see about ways that we can move some money over, at least temporarily, to help our residents. And I don't know if I have to make a formal request with that, or if it's part of something that you guys can look at. Because I know it was already, you were supposed to look at it, but I also think it's something that's time sensitive, so. All right. And then lastly, I know we have our Christmas tree lighting ceremony every year at City Hall. But I'm hoping that we can spruce it up a little bit and make it like a Christmas town at City Hall with vendors and whatnot. And so I don't know what the opportunities would be for, I know that there's certain companies that do them in places like Santa Monica. And for us to maybe reach out to them to see if they could, they would be interested in doing something at City Hall or even on Artsakh Street, but kind of creating a Christmas town for our kids that, I know we've had the program for the tree lighting ceremony, but, I think more than cocoa. That's it. All right, next item.
Next is community event announcements. Per mayor policy, this item also permits speakers wishing to speak under general oral communications subject to the 3-minute time limit. Discussion is limited to matters not on the agenda. Mayor Asatrian, we have 3 speaker cards. Our first speaker is Mike Mohill.
Great. And as Mr. Mohill's coming up, I did want to note that I think it's important for us to also review our policies with respect to videos that are submitted and how they're used. And so I'd like some sort of report on what's been done in the past. My understanding is that they have to be submitted at least 24 hours in advance and reviewed prior to the council meeting. And so I don't know if those are set policies, but something we should be looking into for future meetings. Mr. Mohill.
Good evening, council members. My name is Mike Mohill. As the city continues to go forward and remove traffic lanes and parking lanes for bicycle lanes throughout our city, there is a voter backlash brewing. Tonight, the Verdugo wash is also on the agenda. It has been noted too many times impacted residents have not been properly notified. The proponents for these bicycle lanes are well organized and funded. Council members Asatrian, Brotman, and Kasakian, please do not place your values on Glendale residents. Some Glendale residents are talking lawsuits and will vote you out of office in due time. Please place a referendum on the November ballot to allow all Glendale residents to vote on this controversial subject of bicycle transportation, plus the reconfiguration of the Verdugo wash. With more apartments and condos planned for the city, we will need more, mind you, more traffic lanes than less. As you know, Culver City and Chinatown and San Francisco have already removed their bicycle lanes at a steep cost. All you have to do is check out the disaster of Hollywood Boulevard. Please put on hold any action that our city staff is working on till after all Glendale residents have a chance to vote on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kenneth Sunstead.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members, community members. My name is Kenneth Sunstead, and I'm here today to advocate for the establishment of a sobering center in Glendale for our homeless population and those struggling with drug addiction. It is no secret that there is a very real drug problem in the United States, one to which the city of Glendale is not immune. Sobering centers are a proven solution for diverting people from jails and hospitals, a solution which offers them a safe place to stabilize and receive care. In my experience working at Somerize Sobering Center in San Francisco's Tenderloin District, I saw firsthand how these centers provide critical support. We worked closely with local hospitals, the fire department, and street crisis teams to divert individuals from emergency rooms and jail cells, while addressing the immediate needs of those in crisis and freeing up resources for more pressing emergencies. I also had the privilege of being involved in the inception of the Santa Cruz Sobering Center, combined with the Santa Cruz Sheriff's Department, where we successfully reduced jail admissions and emergency room visits in Santa Cruz County. Both sobering centers demonstrated that providing a space where individuals can safely recover not only helps the individual in crisis, but also alleviates pressure on law enforcement and healthcare services. In March, I presented a utilization review of both of these services at Johns Hopkins University. The presentation summarized research about the success of both of these programs and why they should be implemented in other major urban areas. Sobering centers are not a novel concept and have been used successfully since the 1970s. Glendale would greatly benefit from a sobering center. It would provide a much-needed alternative for individuals living on the streets, offering them the opportunity for care and recovery rather than a trip to the hospital or a jail cell. A Glendale Sobering Center is a program that would bridge the gaps between our healthcare and law enforcement systems, ultimately creating a safer and more compassionate response to our community's needs. I believe this is a crucial step forward in addressing our city's challenges, and I am eager to be a part of the solution. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Our final speaker is Herbert Milano.
Mayor Cetran, members of the City Council and staff, my name is Herbert Milano. I came here to commend the City Council and the City Manager and the Department of Public Works for the amazing work done on San Fernando Road. It's a road that I travel about 50 times a year. I go to Home Depot all the time. And the quality of the reconstruction is amazing. The traffic markings very clear. I just feel amazingly safe, and there's this pleasure of seeing all that green space, you know, along the sides of the road, and then the median as well. It's a terrific experience. I think that it has added significantly to just the feel and the pride that comes in, you know, from being a Glendale stakeholder. What I would love to see is the same idea and the same concept being applied to Glendale Avenue. It has also the opportunity to create great medians. The green space is fantastic. The traffic marking is clear. It's just a fantastic feeling of safety as well, and a bit of pride of, you know, having that kind of experience in Glendale. I also want to thank the city and the Department of Public Works for the other road improvements that were made on the alleys around this neighborhood. The idea of having the middle section be allow the rainwater to percolate into the aquifer is fantastic. But the other outcome that we have had is the alleys are cleaner. People take pride in it. There is less trash. There's less dumping. Neighbors come in and clean themselves. The quality of life has improved significantly for something that was being needed, as you know, for a very, very long time. I would love to see that type of energy being placed on some of the other streets in this neighborhood as well that haven't had that type of attention for nearly 40 years. So fantastic work. Thank you very much, Mr. City Manager. And it's a real happy time for me to actually experience that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and that is all.
Great. Next.
Next are action items. Action item A, community development regarding Alfresco on-site dining and private parking areas. One motion to provide direction regarding the Alfresco program.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of City Council, as you know, we created the Alfresco dining program to allow restaurants to continue operation during the COVID-19 pandemic. And these were allowed within parking lots as well as certain locations in the public right-of-way. Staff since then has analyzed the existing locations within parking lots, private parking lots, to see if they are able or want to continue operating and potentially expand it. And hence, they'll be making recommendations on how to continue this program if approved by council. With that, I'll turn it over to Bradley Calvert, our Community Development Director, to present the item for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Galadian. Good evening, Mayor and council members. As Mr. Galadian outlined, we are here to discuss really the future of the Alfresco dining in private parking lots. One thing I'd like to make a note of before we start this conversation, this will be a very brief presentation, is that this is a distinctly different program from the Alfresco that we see in Montrose on Honolulu and what we see on Brand here in downtown. That is a Alfresco program that is done in the public right-of-way. What we're here to discuss this evening is the Alfresco is located in private lots, private parking lots, or private property in general. And as Mr. Galadian outlined, we're here to consider the continuation of that program that was originally asked of us, I think about a little over a year ago from City Council. What can we do to consider this being a permanent thing for the existing restaurants and potentially a program that could be put forth for future restaurants? Particularly on the basis that many of our restaurants put a lot of effort, a lot of energy, and a lot of money into those installations that they have in place today. And as noted, this was really initiated as a response to the COVID-19 pandemic and allow those restaurants to be operational during that time. We assessed a number of locations. These are the restaurants that we looked at: Glen Arden, Toasted Bun, King's Kitchen, We're Pouring, Dinah's Kitchen, San Fernando Bar, Level Cafe, and Elise House. Councilmember Brotman, I believe you had brought up, and I believe Councilmember Najarian as well during our discussions, our briefings, Pardis is another location that we do have. We actually did not look at them as part of this program because it was such a distinctly different installation than others. We know that we have not seen parking impacts from them, and they actually located it in the back of the restaurant where it essentially functions as a patio, and we did not find any egress issues, ADA issues. There's really nothing we need to do to ask them to improve that facility that you'll see that we had for some of the other locations. If council does want to terminate this program, ultimately they would have to remove theirs at that point. But our focus in this discussion was really about what each location may need to do to come up to code, if you will. But that's why you don't see them located in this or mentioned in that report. There were some other locations, I want to say about another 5 outside of this. All of those locations either have ceased operations for their alfresco installations or they are not interested in pursuing. If they change their mind, and depending on council's direction this evening, they can always reach out to us to consider what it would take to make sure that they're within compliance. We looked at a number of different elements to this. Parking was one of the first, right? Are we going to see some spillover parking effects going into other neighborhoods, overflow onto the streets? That was really kind of one of the crux issues, crux questions at the prior council session. We also need to look at the safety, aesthetics, and accessibility. The provision of outdoor dining for ADA compliance if they did not have another location. Wanting to make sure that these look nice. We saw a number of restaurants really put in a lot of effort in these, make sure that they looked very nice, were compatible with their establishment or the surrounding context, and then also making sure that there was appropriate fire egress for these. We wanted to make sure that there was an opportunity to minimize or mitigate any other potential impacts, though we did not discover any others. With the exception of some discussion around noise, we do believe that's been resolved, as we'll highlight in a moment. Do note that if council does wish to see this move forward as a permanent program and consider future installations, the city does always retain the right to revoke the use of that. Essentially, we would treat this as a sidewalk dining permit, similar with some CUP-like conditions that would be put in place. If we saw any of those violated, the city would have the right to be able to remove that, the ability to have that installation, and ultimately that restaurant would have to take it out. As we evaluated each of these locations, what we had found with Glen Arden, we really just need to see a safety and accessibility plan. We need to make sure that there's fire egress from what they've installed in their parking lot. With Toasted Bun, they needed to look at accessibility and make sure they provide us with an accessibility plan and some improvements aesthetically. I'll touch on that in a moment, what we mean by that. King's Kitchen, we need them to consider noise control and restroom compliance. We had some issues previously with this location regarding noise. We have not seen that since enforcement actions. They have been complying with all city ordinances and policies. So we do believe that they are still a suitable location for this. We're pouring. We would like to discuss more aesthetic enhancements as well as accessibility. They are located between some parking stalls. We need to make sure that the pedestrian path to this outdoor dining is safe and is marked. Dinah's Kitchen, very similar. We need a safe pedestrian access plan. In these cases, this and any accessibility or safety plans, it really is just providing us documentation that they meet all of those requirements. With the San Fernando Bar, attain approval for their accessibility as well as any potential aesthetic improvements. With Level Cafe, consideration of noise control as well as a parking access plan to make sure that they are not impeding the ability to enter any surrounding parking that might be available. And Alicia House, the obtain approval for accessibility and aesthetics. Now, to recap some of those terms that we use there, when we're saying, again, accessibility plan or safety or egress, it's really just providing us a documentation that shows that they have the appropriate paths in the event of a fire or to provide access for anyone in a wheelchair or mobility challenged. For those with aesthetic enhancements, we're not looking for some whole-scale design that needs to be done. There's not a need to go and hire an architect necessarily. We just want to see a little bit of a conversion from what may be some tents and some tables to something a little bit nicer. We know that locations such as Glen Arden and Alicia House have invested a lot in their outdoor dining. We're not expecting necessarily that level of caliber, but we want to make sure that if it's visible from the street, that it does provide an aesthetic improvement, if you will, rather than something that may be detracting. And then with noise control, that may be, depending on the location, needing to apply for an amplified sound permit. Maybe it's having some sort of sound attenuation to prevent any disruption to surrounding neighbors. What we also found in this evaluation is that we have not received any calls for service or complaints regarding parking. As such, there was an early consideration that we should have these restaurants conduct parking studies. We found that being that we had not seen complaints, we had not heard anything from surrounding neighbors, businesses, residents, that we didn't really feel it would be fair to impose a $35,000 to maybe even up to $75,000 parking study for what are relatively modest installations. With that being said, we would need to consider those kind of regulations going forward, and how we would like to apply that to any future installations if council would like us to see this program, or would like to see this program expand. So with that being said, we would apply all of these same parameters, if you will, for any future installations, things like accessibility, egress, aesthetics. And when it comes to parking, I do believe that we will have to look at this on a case-by-case basis. And the reason why I say that is that the parking requirements are different throughout the city. Some places may be falling under an older code where they're underparked and maybe they can't afford to lose those spaces, or the surrounding context cannot. Maybe some places are overparked. In some cases, we may need to ask them to mitigate any potential parking challenges, or maybe we will have to go down the route of a larger parking study, depending on the scale of the installation that they're looking at. If council would like to see this continue with the existing locations, we'll work with each of those locations to bring them up to standard when it comes to all the requests or needs that we may have. Again, much of this follows our outdoor dining program, sidewalk dining, things of that nature. If council would like to see this program expanded, we'll finish developing that review process and criteria for any future installations. It will include all of those elements that we discussed: ADA, egress, design, and then the appropriate steps for parking. With that, concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Councilmember Garabedian.
Thank you. I asked most of my questions on briefing. I have just a couple of more. So some locations like Pardis, I also mentioned Pardis, that they wanted to keep that outdoor area that they have. They already have more parking on their entire facility that they share with their neighbors, basically. It's like a larger retail center. Or Glen Arden has parking across the street, which is an amenity. I think we need to be a little careful for the upcoming look. I know these, that you don't have any, callbacks or phone calls or complaints about parking issue, but I think we need to be careful not to paint this image that every restaurant can take their parking out and put an outdoor dining and not have one. So that's very important to consider. Also, are we developing standards for these outdoor dining areas, or we having one in place, or how does it work?
Mayor and council members, things like accessibility and egress, there are standards behind those that they have to follow, whether it's fire or ADA. Aesthetics, I think we will have to look at that on context, but what I would say is that we're not going to go above. We're not going to be unruly when it comes to design. This is not a structure being built. So we just want to make sure that it's not going to be put together with poor, cheap, flimsy materials, things that are compatible. Otherwise, with the parking, I think good point there. And I think that's why we do need to look at it on a case-by-case basis. We may find a place has 10 extra parking spaces because that's how they chose to build it in 1995, that they can afford to lose 10. Some places may be able to do a shared parking arrangement. As you discussed in Glen Arden, there's a lot across the street. They could work out something with a neighbor as well to mitigate those impacts. And I think that should always be our first step and our first effort before we start taking additional measures to make sure there are no impacts.
Right, and also as far as the music and amplified sound, I think it's important to know which areas they are, and smoking as well. So most of these outdoor sittings, they're very pleasant to sit outside. I mean, we all like to dine outdoors, but some of them have smoking sections, and if that smoking section is up against an apartment building, then it creates a big issue. I mean, it's battle between neighbors all the time, and rightfully so. So I think that's something that, we need to really seriously take into consideration on issuing smoking permits where they are not. Some of these restaurants are on San Fernando Road, it's industrial area, there's not much residential around, they're okay. But the ones that are in dense residential neighborhoods, you have to be careful, as well as the the music and amplified sound as to how late they can have that and everything else, because that would be a quality of life issue with the neighbors.
Mr. Calvert, I think as part of your case-by-case, you noted depending on the scale as one of those options. I think I get concerned with case-by-case, so it doesn't result in some businesses feeling like there's additional burdens or being placed on them versus others. And I think as we were cleaning up our codes for building and safety, I think this is kind of a conversation we've had about having something concrete on the books. So it's very clear when that additional case-by-case is treated. And so I'm very excited for us to move forward and expanding it. But what I would look for is for there to be a clear definition of what triggers for you to say no. So then we don't, end up with businesses feeling like, staff gave somebody favoritism versus another and so forth. So if you could address that and kind of speak to that, that would be helpful.
Mayor and council members, I think we have to have some element of case by case, just because parking sizes, dining sizes are going to be different, restaurant sizes will be different. But I think what we would put in place for this is more of if not this, then this, then this, then this, and then there's ultimately a final point, which may be that parking study, but having a number of other steps in between that could be mitigating factors or considerations for their size or scale of the parking lot or dining installations, so that we're making sure that we tick every single box before we get to that last effort, I guess, if you will, that would be a significant cost. And I think if we set up that kind of roadmap, we would be able to, at some point, be able to find some sort of mitigation in between that would not be cost prohibitive necessarily.
So when you say the ifs, are you suggesting that, if it's by residential and it doesn't have, that area doesn't have certain amount of parking? Again, what I'm trying to avoid is anyone or any situation where staff can turn around and just say, well, I told you so, that's why, right? Because it ends up looking like it's subjective.
No, I think in that case, it'd be, here's a list of mitigating factors if you fall under that category. If you're this, then here's the way to go about resolving that, with the last one down the line being, here's the parking study we would need. As mentioned, maybe they could have a shared parking agreement with somebody who's over parked next door and use some of their spaces so that we don't have that spillover. But we would have essentially a menu of options, if you will, moving down that line before getting to the point of either asking for a parking study, which I do believe would be highly unlikely in most cases, or just an outright denial.
Right. Well, one of the first point you have is no traffic impacts. Are we talking about parking when we talk about traffic too, or just traffic and?
It's kind of thinking of just in case of a worst case scenario, we would consider this. And when we were looking at these locations as well, let's say that this parking lot has 20 spaces and now they've removed 10, 12, whatever it may be. Is that starting to create a stacking issue that would cause a buildup back on the street, or that parking starting to spill over? Again, we didn't run into these issues. I do not sincerely anticipate that we will in the future, but we want to make sure that we do have some safeguard measures. As Councilmember Garpetian brought up, we did have some issues with smoking in some cases or noise. We need to make sure that we have some solution or resolution there in place.
Okay. That's all I have.
I have a question.
Councilmember
Yeah, I have a question. It's kind of similar line of thinking. I mean, we have code which says, you have a restaurant of a certain size, you need a certain amount of parking. So now we're going to go and say, no, you don't need that much parking. I mean, how do we do this kind of legally? And going forward, how do we do it without a set of kind of standards? I don't really understand how that works. And again, yeah, the same kind of issue. Somebody challenges us saying, you're inconsistent, you're not being fair, it's confusing. How do we handle that?
I think it'd be difficult to go forward with this without a set of requirements, much like any other kind of infrastructure that we allow to be built, even if this is temporary and easy. If you look at some of the locations, they built up platform decks, right? We need to make sure that that meets building and safety requirements, that it has ADA accessibility. We have to have those kind of requirements in place. When it comes to parking, I mean, there's a number of state bills right now that would allow just about any new development that's of a commercial use to evade a lot of parking if they wanted to. I think it's more of a market issue at that point. These restaurants, I do not believe are going to go and say, I'm going to get rid of all my parking so I can get 20 more seats, knowing that that now compromised their business in general. Right? If it becomes so difficult, they remove all that parking, and then there's no place for their patrons to come and access the restaurant, they're not going to make that kind of decision. For us, it's making sure that we just don't see a spillover effect from it. So I don't think that there's too many concerns to have around that. I think it's just us being very deliberate and careful when we look at what it is that they're proposing, and maybe that means that outdoor dining installation needs to be a little bit smaller so that we do preserve some spaces.
But does that mean we have to go back into our code and modify our parking requirements for
future restaurants?
For restaurants?
No, not necessarily. That's something that we did not have to do that when we did this program to begin with. And if you look throughout the city's code in general, you're going to see restaurants that are going to have a varying degree of or level of parking because that code has changed throughout time. This is, I would almost make it akin to an overlay, if you will.
Okay, I'm just a little bit unclear on like legally from a standards point of view how this all works, given that we do have certain parking requirements, right? Unless state law has preempted them. I'm not sure where we are with all that and how we can just say, well, we're going to do this for you and we're going to do that for you.
The other part I would also mention to this that I kind of failed to mention before is that this is not a permanent approval, right? This is very much like a CUP where, and that may be something we have to consider as part of this, a renewal process. It's something we can revoke at any point in time. This is not a permanent structure being built. You're not permanently compromising those parking spaces. It's going to be a temporary installation at the end of the day.
Okay. I mean, just as far as, I'm done with the questions, but comments. I'm glad we're doing this. I want to try to, accommodate these establishments, make sure it's safe, obviously, make sure it's not creating problems in the neighborhood, but do everything we can to allow people to continue to enjoy outdoor dining, not put, burdensome costs on for a parking study. I'm glad you're saying you don't want to do that. And so I'm in favor, and I am in favor of kind of having a set of guidelines that we use going forward. If other restaurants, come and say they want to do something similar to this, I think it's good for our community. People love it.
Thanks. Councilmember Garpetia?
Yeah. I think Councilmember Rotman brought a very valid point, and that is because if this is like a CUP type approval that we can revoke anytime or like 60-day notice, sometimes it may not be fair because they invest a lot into turning these parking lots into outdoor dining area. So we have to be, cognizant of the fact that they spend that much money. But on the other hand, I think issuing a permit that removes all their parking spaces if they're not located in an area that they're sharing parking with their neighbors that may be like daytime operations, retail daytime operation, they can share parking at nighttime. Last Saturday, my wife and I, we went to visit one of those restaurants. I'm not gonna name them. There was no parking, so we went around a couple of times and we had to go somewhere else because we couldn't park in the area. It was very dense area. So.
Dinah's Chicken.
Huh?
Dinah's?
I said, I'm not. No, it was McDonald's. So I think issuing new permits that is going to allow to remove all their parking spaces, I don't think that's a good idea. So that's one of the things that we need to consider. If they have shared parking with their neighbors or if they can provide more parking. But other than that, I think smoking and music, that's a must to regulate.
All right. Any other comments?
Sure. I'll just say that, first of all, I agree with the points that my colleagues have made. My question before I make my comments is, So if a business decides to remove a handicap, a disabled parking spot, what position does that put the restaurant in if they've removed one of those? Is there an issue for ADA compliance at that point?
That's a great question, and I wish I would have mentioned it earlier on. They cannot remove that. That is a requirement. They have to have that ADA parking. And if I can go back for just a minute, Garpetian, to your point, I highly unlikely we'll see a location where we would allow the removal of all parking spaces in exchange for this. And I don't think we'll see many that would actually ask for that because, to your point, they won't have business, right? You went somewhere else instead.
So my comments would say that I see this both from the restaurant owner's perspective. I also see it from whether it's the public, the patron. We've seen a lot of these places become more established over time and haven't necessarily heard the complaints about parking issues near the establishments, especially the ones that you have listed. I think I've been to most of them, if not all of them, during the period when they established outdoor dining. I think it's appropriate to allow staff the latitude to figure out what works and what doesn't work, because in terms of standard, there are some things you may be able to standardize. For instance, ensuring that every location has ADA accessible parking spots. But then every location is different. And, as Councilmember Garpetian mentioned, there may be one where the patio abuts perhaps an apartment building, and there may be issues with secondhand smoke. Staff needs to be able to look at each site on its own and figure out what works where, along with the business owners. So specifically, in terms of what you're seeking from us, Mr. Calvert, I would ask, what is it that you want us to say to you today, other than I'm supportive of staff taking the lead on these sites and working with the owners to make sure that their needs are met without having a significant impact on the neighborhood?
I think the feedback and the comments that we're hearing from council here tonight is going to help us refine those parameters going forward. Otherwise, it would be looking for direction to continue this program and if whether or not to allow for the future expansion. But I think the comments regarding the music, smoking, other things related to ADA parking or mitigation strategies, all of this is going to be helpful and useful for us.
So, and one more thing I'll add is I don't know what the future necessarily of parking will be. I believe that businesses should provide parking. But, we've seen how Lyft and Uber and some of these rideshare programs have changed how people get to places and get from places. I, not long ago with my family, was in San Francisco where we rode in a self-driving car, and those are now in Phoenix and in Los Angeles. The company, I think, is Waymo, owned by Google. So who knows what's going to happen in the next 5-10 years. But having said that, I would like us to still, where the businesses have designated their own parking, if the business were to change hands, if ownership was to change to a new owner, I think that the use should not necessarily be grandfathered or transferred over. At that point, they should probably, because we don't know what type of restaurant it may be. It could be one that's more popular, less popular, may not have as much, may have more traffic, generate more traffic. So I would say if the business changes ownership, then they need to reapply and give a plan as to how they're going to use the space.
Yes, it would carry with the business or the tenant at that time, not necessarily the use, but excellent point. They would have to go through that process again.
Okay, that's all.
They may not need to change anything either. So,
All right. Any other comments? Okay. Do I have a motion?
We do have a speaker card for this item.
Okay. We'll take the speaker.
The speaker is Shane Lee.
Do I have 2 or 3 minutes?
You have 3 minutes.
Got it. Thank you. Hello, City Council. I think this is a fantastic project. Also, my name's Shane Lee. I'm a lifelong Glendalian. I love this city. I love the work you do. It's hard work. Thank you for your service. I am also the chapter leader for Glendale YIMBY. and we fully support initiatives like this. I think that converting parking into outdoor dining is just fantastic. When I went to college in Santa Cruz, they did the same thing, and it was absolutely stunning. There's also a lot of data backing up that initiatives like this are much better land use. I just quickly looked up an article where Donald Shoup, who's like a parking expert, they found that there were 13 restaurants in San Pedro. This happened like 2 years ago. 13 restaurants. In 2019, they generated about $4 million in sales tax. In 2022, when they implemented Alfresco dining, just 13 restaurants generated $11 million in sales tax. That's a $7 million increase in sales tax because people love going to outdoor dining. It makes more revenue from a sales tax perspective and just a revenue perspective for the business when parking can be used for dining rather than just empty space for empty vehicles, which is a very sort of curt way of describing a parking lot. I think that I would much prefer living next to an outdoor dining area than a parking lot. And one more thing I want to add, I think this is great, and I think we should I would be an advocate for eliminating all parking mandates. I think the esteemed Laura Friedman, who was once our mayor of this great city, she's done a lot of great work removing parking mandates within a half mile of transit. I think we've been talking and we've been thinking about how do we legally tell people which people are allowed to remove parking mandates, and do we have to update our parking mandates? What if we just get rid of them and let business owners decide for themselves if and when they do want parking? I don't think this government should tell property owners how much parking they have to have. We should let them make that decision. And if there's more demand for outdoor dining than parking, then businesses will respond by creating outdoor dining space instead of parking space. I think this is a great idea, and I think we should initiate it, and maybe we should just eliminate parking mandates altogether. Food for thought. Thank you for your service. I love this city, and I love living here, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
I love your enthusiasm. Thank you. All right. Are there any other comments before we? Okay. Do I have a motion?
I guess I'll move the item, but it's just giving directions to staff, which you've taken, right? Oh, there are two
Alternative one.
alternatives? Okay.
Two, no? Are you looking
No.
for two or one?
I thought it was just motion to provide direction regarding Alfresco.
No, we were looking for the motion to, if council desires, to continue the existing program and allow for future expansion.
Okay, I'll make the motion to continue the existing program and allow for future expansion.
I believe
Alternative
Mr. Garcia could let us know which number that is. I don't have it in front of me.
Alternative one.
Well, it's the motion that's before you. That is the motion. It's listed alternative one, staff report.
Is there a
Do I have a
second?
second? All right.
Council members Brotman,
Yes.
Garpetian,
Yes.
Kasakian,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Mayor Asatryan.
Can we get a report of what those guidelines are going to be when you have it? Just email to us.
Yes, we could draft that as a memo or come back to council if you'd wish.
Thanks. Look at this. Yes, unanimous.
It's the first time for everything.
We had it. I mean, why you gotta do this? Next item.
Next item is action item B, Police Department regarding dispense with competitive bidding and issue purchase orders with the Genesis Group. One, resolution to dispense with competitive bidding and authorize the Deputy Director of Finance to issue a purchase order with the Genesis Group for a software solution for the radio system redundancy project in an amount not to exceed $102,197. And two, resolution to dispense with competitive bidding and authorize the Deputy Director of Finance to issue a purchase order with the Genesis Group for ongoing software maintenance for the life of the product with the fiscal year 24-25 amount not to exceed $25,000.
All right. Do my colleagues need a report on this? We don't need a report. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Roll call.
Council members Brotman,
Can we?
Carpet,
All right. Go ahead.
Garpetian,
Yes.
Kasakian,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Mayor Asatryan.
Yes. Just wanted to give Mr. Brotman some time. All right. Next item.
Next is action item C, Police Department regarding dispense with competitive bidding and issue a purchase order Contract for police helicopter parts with helicopter engine repair overhaul services. One, resolution to dispense with competitive bidding and authorize the Deputy Director of Finance to issue a purchase order contract with helicopter engine repair overhaul services for a term of 3 years in an amount not to exceed $1,200,000.
All right, and who's going to be making the presentation on this?
Mayor, it'll be Chief Sid.
I don't think we need a thorough report unless my colleagues need it, but I think it would be nice to just have an overview.
Mayor and council, good evening. I intend to be incredibly concise. So before you, you're going to have, we're going to, over the course of my time up here, we're going to go over 2 different items that both relate to our air support program. The first that you see up on the screen there is our Heroes Inc. contract. Heroes stands for Helicopter Engine Repair and Overhaul Services. And in short, what this is a service provider that we have had for a handful of years that help support our air support program and in the most basic of terms, serve as mechanics and help service our helicopters. So what you're seeing before you is a resolution to dispense with competitive bidding to authorize the CM or his designee to purchase, to issue a purchase order for Heroes for the term of 3 years in an amount of not to exceed $1.2 million. The first year's cost of $775 has already been approved in the 24-25 budget as a part of our joint air support fund. Mayor, council members, if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
I'm assuming the next item is related to this as well in our situation right now with our helicopter, is it not, Chief?
It is, sir.
Would it be possible, Mr. Garcia, to take the items together or to move them?
They can be taken together, but the second item will have to be read into the record.
Let's read it into the record.
Okay. The second item, action item D, is Police Department regarding dispensing with competitive bidding and issuing a purchase order contract for police helicopter parts with Helimart Inc. One, resolution to dispense with competitive bidding and authorize the Deputy Director of Finance to issue a purchase order contract with Helimart Inc. for a term of 3 years in an amount not to exceed $500,000.
Go ahead, ask the question.
No, I don't have a question, just a comment. I know that we were here not too long ago to talk about the situation with our helicopter, and things did not work out as we wanted to because the company that was manufacturing those helicopters is not, and so now we're forced into maintaining our current fleet. So I think this is important and essential. It's part of allowing you and your staff to do the good work that you've been doing, try and keep the community safe. So I'm happy to move both resolutions.
Second.
Roll call. No other comments, right?
No questions.
Look at us. Roll call.
Council members Brotman,
Yes.
Garpetian,
Both items.
Yes.
Azakian,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Mayor Asatrian.
Yes.
Mayor and council, appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Next item.
Next item is the final action item. Action item E, community development regarding Verdugo Wash Master Plan. One, motion authorizing the city manager or his designee to execute a professional services agreement with Michael Van Valkenbra Associates, Inc. in the amount of $5,762,370 using grant funds for the preparation of the Verdugo Wash Master Plan.
I believe our colleague, Councilmember Garpetian, had asked for a 2-minute break before he left. So if we can take a 2-minute recess and come back. Thank you. All right, great. Where do we did read it into the record. Mr. Garcia.
Madam Mayor, I believe Councilmember Najarian has a disclosure.
You bet I do. I'd like to make a few statements regarding my potential recusal from this matter. My spouse owns a property at 1116 Ethel Street. This is a single-family residence which was purchased before our marriage. So, prior to our marriage, and the property is owned in her name only. Prior to our marriage, a premarital agreement set forth my rights in that property, which were essentially to declare it as her separate property with a waiver of any chance of transmutation of that property into community property. I have no interest in that piece of land. The issue before us is an item related to the Verdugo Wash. Some have described it as the largest public works project that the city may ever see, promising to bring air quality improvements, noise improvements, traffic and congestion improvements throughout the entire city, and as we've heard in previous weeks, increasing property values through the entire area, bike lanes in particular. Yet because my wife owns a property which is maybe 50 feet of frontage on the current Verdugo Wash, I've been informed that I must recuse myself. And I find that to be quite disturbing because it is such a large project and it does affect an incredibly large number of residents in the city, if not, as the proponents have stated, everyone in the city. I take issue with the opinion that the city attorney gave me previously, and this is maybe the fourth or fifth time this has come before. And just so everyone understands, the city attorney obviously knows this, but under the Political Reform Act, I don't know, I thought you were trying to get in, trying to tell me something. Under the Political Reform Act, public officials may not make, participate in making, or attempt to use their official positions to influence a government decision in which they know or have reason to know that they have a disqualifying interest. A public official has a disqualifying interest if the governmental decision at issue will have a reasonably foreseeable material effect on the official's financial interests. This is reading from the FPPC regulation. To determine whether a financial interest is material depends on the type of financial interest involved. Recently, the FPPC amended the standard for determining whether a decision will have a material effect on a public official's interest in real property. The point I'm making is that my interest is not material. And I'm citing FPPC 18702.2. Aside from the financial interest that would cause me to recuse myself, there are exceptions to that. The exception is if the decision concerns the adoption of an amendment of a general plan and all of the following apply. And I would argue that this bicycle plan, that this Verdugo Wash is part of the bicycle plan, which is a subcomponent of our general plan. If the decision only identifies planning objectives or is otherwise exclusively one of policy. a decision will not qualify under this subdivision if the decision is initiated by the public official, by a person that has a financial interest to the public official, or a person representing the public official. Section B, the decision requires further decision or decisions by the public agency before implementing the planning or policy objectives, such as permitting, licensing, rezoning, or the approval of a change of zoning, land use ordinance, or a specific plan. C, the decision does not concern an identifiable parcel or development project. The decision does not concern an identifiable parcel solely because in the proceeding before the agency in which the decision is being made, the parcel or parcels are merely included in an area depicted along a map or diagram offered in connection with the decision. The decision does not concern the agency's prior, current, or subsequent approval or change to a permit, license, zoning designation, zoning variance, land use ordinance. My argument, therefore, is that because we are in a planning document, a planning stage, and if this report goes forward, you will hear and you will see in the documents that this is a planning and policy decision, that the interest that I have, as convoluted as it is, through my wife's separate property that I have no interest in, is an immaterial interest which will permit me to work and to participate on this program, on this policy. Now, this is something that I'm posing. I'm not sure who the referee is in this. I'm not sure if it's our city attorney. I think I have a very valid argument to argue these points, that we're not at the stage yet where my interest becomes material. At some point later on, maybe yes. If they're going to build a bike platform outside my wife's home, well, then that's a specific parcel. They're doing land use and all that. So I am going to argue, and I do argue, that I have an interest, but it's immaterial due to being an exception under the FPPC rules. I also would like to address at some later point, before we discuss this issue, conflicts of interest that other council members may have being outside the 500 feet, but within the 1,000 feet boundary of the Verdugo Wash. So who calls, obviously we're not here to argue it at this point, Mr. Garcia. I'm just stating my position. Who makes this call? When is this call made? Am I in it until I'm out? Am I out of it until I'm in? Can you help me with that?
Sure. Councilman Najarian, so as you know, and you referenced, we had advised that you recuse on this matter due to the proximity of your spouse's house to the project. Our view is that exception is for general plans is not applicable, as this is not a general plan under the government code, as that term is used. More applicable general plan would be, for example, when we're discussing the land use element of the general plan, that exception might be more applicable. Ultimately, our office can only provide an opinion. It's ultimately up to the FPPC to issue an opinion to say you cannot participate, or you can. My advice always is to err on the side of caution, to recuse yourself from this discussion. If you want us to seek an official opinion from the FPPC, we can do that. I mean, obviously, there will be multiple opportunities for this matter to come back to council, and we can then, get that opinion, and you can decide in the future, assuming we proceed with the discussion tonight. Obviously the risk, I think you are aware of this. The risk is if you participate, believing you have this applicable session, and the FPPC determines that you weren't allowed to participate, that could affect you personally, as the FPPC reviews these matters administratively and does impose penalties for violation of it. The other thing I would point out too, the other risk is my understanding is that when the FPPC issues opinions, they don't issue them for past conduct. So that's one thing. They may not issue an opinion whether your past participation was proper. They will only look into the future and just say in the future you can or cannot participate. So for those reasons, I would still recommend that you recuse if the council is going to move forward and decide this issue tonight. The only other thing I would add is I did ask my staff to inquire or get the information regarding the timeline for an FPPC opinion. By their own rules, they're required to issue, if we submit all the requisite information, they are required to submit a response within 21 working days of that request. So that's the information I'll provide to you. Again, recommend if the council is going to move forward tonight on this that you recuse. You've already did the disclosure of your spouse's address, so you would need to take no other further action as far as your recusal other than to step down from the dais.
May I listen to my colleagues' recusal statements and then leave?
I think that's fine. We haven't gotten to the merits of the matter.
Before we do that, may I ask a point of clarification? Madam Mayor? So, my preference in general is that all of us participate in as many of us participate as allowable by law in these discussions. And on this one, I understand that potentially two colleagues may be conflicted out. But my question is this: in layman's terms, can you please explain to us when a recusal, what triggers a recusal of a council member from a particular item?
Sure. And I think Councilman Najarian appropriately quoted the section of the FPPC guidelines. When a council member or a public official knows or has reason to know that the governmental decision at issue is going to have a material financial impact. Sure. And the regulations define property within 500 feet as it being material decision, unless there's clear and convincing evidence that it won't have a material financial impact.
So my question would be, if there was to be a park proposed near any one of our homes, or would the person living within a certain feet of that proposed park have to recuse themselves from it?
Potentially, yes.
But potentially, what would trigger that? What if it's
I would say,
what if it's a repaving of the streets or
There
repair
are
of
some
the
exceptions
sidewalk?
for repaving of streets, utilities, sewer, those sorts of things. There are exceptions for those. When you're talking about a park or a very defined project like this project, there are potential for there to be a conflict where you have to, when you're within the 500 feet, for the public official to consider recusal. At that point, work with our office to see whether that 500 foot rule applies, or if it doesn't apply, if there's an exception, those sorts of things. So, I will say generally for properties within 500 feet, it's almost presumed it's material, and the burden is on somebody who wants to participate to be able to demonstrate that the decision at issue will not have a material financial effect on their property.
The reason I'm asking this because I think it complicates our ability to do work that we want to do on behalf of the entire city. And the San Fernando beautification project, right? By its nature, one would assume that's going to have an impact. I definitely live within 500 feet of it. I would think it's 500 feet at the end of the block, but I don't believe I recused myself, nor do I think I should have recused myself from that.
I can't speak to it. I mean, I don't want to speak on an issue that happened in the past.
I understand that, but I mean, I think on capital improvement projects, which are major projects to improve or add to our city's infrastructures or facilities, I think that every council member should be able to vote on that, versus something where it's like a zone change that may impact their own property's value. This is a potential arterial or improvements or changes to a public works type facility, and I think that it should be allowed that everyone has the ability to participate in it. That's my view on it. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, Councilmember Garpetian.
Well, never a dull moment, huh? Well, I was also asked by our city attorney to recuse myself from voting on Verdugo Wash project. I live within that 500 feet, and I think that's what most of the concentration is. If you live within a 500 feet of a project or a plan, you have to recuse yourself, or you have to prove that you don't have a conflict of interest, which is mostly financial interest. So I was told to mention the properties that I own. I own 3 properties in Verdugo Woodlands, 1721 Camulus, 1722 Camulus, and 1721 Wabasos Way, they're all within 300 feet of Verdugo Wash. I also disagree with the opinion that I have to recuse myself, because all these properties, they front Verdugo Wash maybe 450 to 600 feet of it. This is a 9.5 mile-long project. And I believe with the statements that was made, or based on, let me get my paperwork together. Based on the exemptions that it's stated in 18702.2, materiality standard, financial interest in real property. This is an FPCC rule. I didn't know about this. This was given to me by our city attorney. So I went through it as well, and there are on 3rd page, item 8, not item 8. The exceptions part, there is a item 1, 2, D1, 2, A, and B. Most of them applies to my case, that I do not have a conflict. And I think since from the day one, we had discussions over Verdugo Wash, and I participated already in some of these discussions, and I wasn't informed that I have to recuse myself. I think the fair thing to do is pause any decision that we're going to make on this project until we get clarification as to if we can participate or not. And also, within the same document, 18702.2, after it mentions properties which are within 500 feet, it says, item 8, it says involves properties located more than 500 feet, but less than 1,000 feet from the property line of the parcel, and decision would change the parcels, and it indicates how many different things: development potential, income producing potential, highest and best use, market value, which, you know, it was mentioned many times that this project will increase your property values, and the financial effect of governmental decision on a parcel of real property in which, now this is another one. So market value, income producing potential, highest and best use, and most importantly, character by substantially altering traffic levels, intensity of use, parking, view privacy, noise levels, and air quality, which many of these items, air quality, traffic levels, intensity of use, parking, will be affected by Verdugo Wash project, which is part of our bicycle master plan project. And I believe Councilman Brotman lives within less than 1,000 feet from this project, from Verdugo Wash. So if I am conflicted out, then probably Mr. Brotman is conflicted out too, because it clearly indicates item 8 involves properties located more than 500 feet, but less than 1,000 feet. I don't know if the city attorney looked into that option or not. If yes, please correct me if I'm wrong, but if not, I think this should be looked into as well. And then we come back and say, okay, who has conflict and who doesn't have a conflict? Because based on this law, if you live within less than 1,000 feet, and this project may affect your market value of your property, or affects the highest and best use, or income producing potential, air quality, and I went over the whole thing. So if it does that, then probably Councilman Brotman is conflicted out as well. So because of this reasons, I think we need to pause any decision, and our city attorney maybe look into it and see if I have a conflict or not. I would like to write a letter to FPCC myself tomorrow and express my case to them and state the facts that I believe it's right, and see if they can, with the help of our city attorney, so to get an opinion letter as soon as possible. And on the same token, if the 500 feet applies, and if I have a conflict of interest, then on bicycle master plan, I had a conflict of interest, Mr. Brockman had a conflict of interest, and Councilmember Katsakian had a conflict of interest too, because Councilman Katsakian lives less than 500 feet from Glen Oaks Boulevard, which is part of the project, bicycle master plan. Councilman Brockman lives less than 500 feet away for sure from Kenyatta Boulevard, which is part of the master plan, and I live less than 500 feet away from Kenyatta Boulevard, which is part of the master plan, as well as Councilman, I don't know if you live less than 500. So if this applies to me, we have to go back and look at every decision we have made. If Councilman Brockman has a conflict, then all the decision that was made as a third or deciding vote in the last 2-3 years, what happens to those? That's a question. So I'm just going to throw the towel in right now, and I'm asking, just to be fair, if it takes 20 days, 21 days, put a pause on making a decision until we clear who has a conflict of interest and who doesn't.
I'll second that if that's a motion.
That's my motion.
So, before anything else, I'm trying to understand, so we've known this item's coming. I'm trying to get clarity on when these issues were raised, both from the city attorney's end and from my colleagues to the city attorney. Because what I'm frustrated with is this was not communicated. If there was a request that there be an FPPC or reaching out to the FPPC, I don't understand why it's being done tomorrow morning when there's,
Well,
they have 21 days.
answer that
If I may finish.
Go ahead and finish.
So I would like to know when it was communicated to colleagues. When did my colleagues come to you with their concerns? Because I'm trying to gauge why this wasn't resolved before this council meeting tonight.
Sure, I'll do my best on our end of it, Mayor Satrian. So, I think Councilman Najarian addressed the fact that this has been an ongoing issue with respect to his participation. He has previously always recused from participating for this reason. So again, as following up, we've always provided that input, and he has recused himself. This is the first time the Verdugo Wash project has come to council since Councilman Garpetian has been on. It was raised. I advised Councilman Garpetian a couple weeks ago. I actually gave him more formal legal writing, as well as Councilman Najarian last week. To me, the way I view it, I'll just be honest, it's a relatively straightforward application of the regulation. It's intended, that 500-foot rule is intended to be a bright line rule, as much as possible, only overridden when there are some extenuating circumstances. So that's our opinion. Now, if we want to ask for an FPPC opinion and push this off a month, and my understanding it's super time sensitive, that's an option for the council. It will certainly provide some finality to whether or not council members Garpetian and Najarian can participate, knowing that there'll be obviously many future decisions on the project going forward. And I did want to briefly, there was a lot there to unpack. I'm not going to address it all tonight, but I'm happy to answer any questions. I did want to, with respect to Councilmember Brotman living within 1,000 feet, the rules and the presumptions are entirely different, as well as the fact that the public general exception applies in his case, but not with respect to properties within 500 feet, just in terms of how you apply those percentages. So for us, again, that was like it's a non-issue, something we looked at and determined, I think, a while back it wasn't applicable.
Okay.
So if I may, just to answer you, I got the letter from our city attorney. his opinion letter, August 3rd, and which is a Sunday, and I also received 2 documents, right?
That
Regarding
Sure.
the conflict of interest, and I had to sit and read them all on top of all the work that I have to do, and so
We
it-
all
it's
have to
been-
read,
No, I
Councilmember Garber.
understand, so-
I understand, but you keep raising somehow that like you're the only person that has things to read, and I really don't appreciate that, so.
Well, I don't, look,
You
I don't
know,
want to turn this into something else, but if it's my time, let me speak, and then you can clear. And I don't, it has nothing to do with feelings. This is about facts. The item 8 that involves more than 500 feet and less than 1,000 feet clearly indicates the conflict of interest issues in there. And one of them is market value, which will affect the market value. And the other one is highest and best use. It will affect that. And also, it will affect if the project affects the traffic levels, intensity of use, parking, noise level, and air quality, which this project will. So these items applies to properties that are more than 500 feet and less than 1,000 feet. Now, I'm not an attorney, but I can read legal documents as well. And this is very clear. It's just a section for that. And if that is not a conflict of issue, then we have to, all I'm saying is, I'd like to get an opinion from FPPC. And if they say, no, I'm wrong, hey,
Mayor.
that's fine. So, and this was like, I had 5 working days to work on all of this. So I think I did okay, considering that half of that was weekend as well.
So I think just kind of moving forward, what I would ask from our city manager and city attorney is if there are such requests coming in from my council colleagues, whether it's FPPC, whether it's the 21 days, whatever it may be, prior to us scheduling something for a council meeting, for us to get those things cleared up, especially if they're not time sensitive. So I had a conversation with Councilmember Garpetian about this last week. I wasn't aware that it's 21 days to be able to get that response back, but if there are these issues, so we don't waste time both on the dais and everyone can have the answers just, one way or another, it would be helpful that we get those answers and then we schedule something for a council,
One last
right?
point, I appreciate that, but one last point, it's not that I waited until the last minute to bring this up. I was told to read what's written in this letter, to recuse myself here today publicly, and that's the first opportunity that I had to express myself and voice my opposition to it. This was supposed to be done today in a public session because I was told that I have to recuse myself and also mention why I'm recusing myself and mention all the properties or one property or what have you that I own within that project area. And I don't mind doing it. Many people don't like it, but hey, I'm past that because they already took pictures of my property and my house and put it on social media with different comments. That's a different story. But the reason that I'm bringing this up tonight is because this is the first time that I was told to talk about it. That's all.
Mayor Satrian understood, and Mr. Garcia and I do our best to keep all of you informed of important issues that may come up during council meetings, but Councilmember Najarian nor Councilmember Garpetian hadn't requested an opinion from FPCC until this evening, so we didn't know.
Mayor.
I mean, all right, not for staff, right, but it makes these meetings less productive, and we can only make these meetings productive and efficient if all parties are participating in that end goal. Councilmember Kasakian.
Thank you. So it appears that there are some issues that Councilmember Garpetian, and I'm assuming Councilmember Najarian will also be interested in what the FPPC has to say, and once the Fair Political Practices Commission has weighed in on this, then we can move forward. As I said, I'm happy. I welcome the participation of my colleagues, regardless of what their opinions on an issue may be and whether they're in agreement or in disagreement with me. But I think if we can get clarity, it just makes this a lot cleaner and better. And if we were to move forward on this tonight, I would not feel comfortable. There's already this perception put out there by some people who continue to peddle that there is this effort to minimize certain voices and participation. Let's just get clarity. Let's get an answer, a definitive one, and move forward accordingly. I've stated my opinion on it, and I'd like to know if I'm correct as well, if this project is one that meets the requirements that would trigger recusals. That's my thoughts on this, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
So I'm in agreement, but I would also like clarity on Councilmember Brotman's participation as well. And say the FPPC comes back and says all three have to recuse themselves, what happens then?
Mayor Satrian, right, if it's called, rule of necessity is the common law definition, but it's called rule of legally required participation. So you would select one council member. If all three were conflicted, you would, by random draw, whether picking straws or names out of a hat, you would pick one council
Will we not
member.
let everybody in?
No, we've done this before.
No, you can only pick enough to have a quorum.
We have done that before.
We have done it before. It's been a while, but
I think I was the one who ended up drawing them.
Right. Yeah, that's the rule. You can only pick enough council members to get your quorum back,
And when you say pick out of a hat?
or draw straws, or some other random
Okay.
selection method. Right.
Higher votes,
Can
if it turns out that way, if there was a conflict, if, this is a big if, don't we invalidate previous votes in which there was a deciding vote cast by
It's
and I'm
we-
not even sure the votes went that way, but.
Right. That would be something we'd have to look at.
May I?
Yes, Councilmember Brotman.
This is just so frustrating. We've known, I mean, Councilmember Najarian, you've been on, Garpetian, you were elected in March. It's been 6 months. You've known this item was coming up. You talked about it during your campaign, so you knew this was an item coming up. This should have been addressed a long time ago, not the night when we're sitting here ready to make a decision. You know, it's not fair to staff. It's not fair to the public. It undermines our process and it makes us look like idiots. You know, these are questions that are not new or surprising. I've always relied on our city attorney, and he's, I think, always given good advice. The advice was, I mean, you've never suggested I have to recuse. I never actually asked, but you would have told me. Councilmember Najarian has always recused routinely every time this has come up without protest. You know, to pop this on us at this time, I think is unfair, and it smacks of games playing. And I think it's really, really inappropriate, and I think we should move ahead and decide on this item. That's where I stand.
So
Can I just briefly address that, Madam Mayor?
Yes.
You know, I'm sure Councilman Garpetian can speak for himself, but in fairness, and I know it's been an issue, and we've talked about it, but when I saw it on the forecast recently, not too long ago, that's when I had the first conversation with him, and then got him a follow-up memo, and I don't want it to seem as this entirely lies on Councilman Garpetian, and he's correct. This process requires now him and Councilman Najarian to disclose tonight that there's a potential issue for a conflict. And so I understand from their perspective wanting the FPPC opinion. My view, it won't change the outcome, but they're certainly entitled to it, and will certainly provide the needed clarity that I think I'm hearing from all of you want to have before you move forward on this project. So anyway, I just wanted to say that because I don't think it lies entirely on Councilmember Garpetian.
And thank you, Mr. Garcia. And in my defense, I'm not trying to drop this at the 11th hour. This document was given to me by city attorney last week, August 3rd, which was a Sunday. September 3rd, which was a Sunday.
Wait, so this was given to you on September 3rd or August 3rd?
September 3rd, September 3rd, I'm sorry.
First time you said August 3rd too.
No,
so-
no,
yeah,
September 3rd. It was a Sunday. I went through it, and from that day to today, 2 days is a weekend. I had to go to 2 weddings, and it was a great time. So I did my best to read and ask questions, and this is a legal document. 2 legal documents. That's when I had to read this 7 times. I'm not an attorney, but I can read documents, and I can go through them fast and understand them. So I had to read it several times to understand that conflict of interest issue over 500 feet, but less than 1,000 feet. I've never
Okay,
seen this
Councilmember-
document before. No,
Councilmember
because
Garbatz,
in
and
my
I-
defense, I'm not trying to be inappropriate or anything. This document was given to me on September 3rd. I did my best, and this is the only time, the first time that I have an opportunity to talk about it. And I don't want to be criticized for talking about an issue that I have every right to talk about.
Say one more thing. I have
Please
a
keep it
question.
short.
It will be. I mean, I would like us all to participate. Is there any way we as a body can say that we'll all sit here and participate? What's the, and what is the risk ultimately if my 2 colleagues participate and we get an FPPC decision, which you said doesn't look back, it just looks forward? So what is the downside? Could we just go ahead and hear this item with all 5 of us present?
Councilmember Brotman, that would not be my advice because, again, if the standard is if they knew or had reason to know, given the fact that I'm advising them that they have a conflict, it would be extremely, in my view, extremely risky for them to participate until we would get clarity from the FPPC.
All right. So I think we have, just for clarifying purposes, Mr. Garcia? Because we have this on the agenda, and seems like there's consensus to allow for the FPC hearing. Not from you, but yes, so, okay. We have members of the public that are present here today. If we open up the public comment today, do we have to open up public comment again?
I think it's, Mayor, I don't know if it's appropriate if people who have to recuse themselves still be here potentially to hear this. Is that?
That's correct. Once we open up the item on the merits and to have a report and have the public speak,
I think we need
they would need to recuse themselves.
I think we need an FPPC decision on this, giving us clarity as to where everyone stands. And then after that, we can resume this. I know it's not the desired way of moving forward for anyone here, whether it's Councilmember Najarian, Garpetian, Councilmember Brotman, any of us. But I think let's just get that decision from the FPPC and then move forward based on that.
But I'm trying to get clarity on if we can allow.
No, because
Well, would my colleagues be willing to go to the back for the public comment portion? That's what I'm asking.
I would not. If that was the case, then I'd walk out as well, because I don't think it's appropriate. I think ultimately we should just, I understand I apologize to members of the public who are here, but I hope the members of the public are getting the same education in this process of transparency as we are today. I think we put a pause on this, then we resume when we have an answer. This is not about gamesmanship. This is about just figuring out what's the right way to do this.
Okay.
I would also move that council be presented with the letter that Mr. Garcia writes to the FPPC, because in it, there may be assumptions made, there may be descriptions, there may be an explanation of what this plan is. Is it a subset of the general plan? Are there potential property value increases? All these items that we've been talking about, I think we should all have a look at it and agree on the certain assumptions that you're going to be making in that letter.
If I may on that, you can also contact the FPPC. I have done that on my own time on other matters. So can Councilmember Garpetian. And so our city attorney has to submit something, I think we should see it. But the contents of it, I'm not an attorney to then say, well, this should be included, this is how I'm interpreting it, this is how I'm not interpreting it. So I leave it to the city attorney to be the city attorney. I think we should be able to see the letter without having our input. And I think each of you have an opportunity, just like anybody else, to go to the FPPC to also seek additional answers. Should you decide that our city attorney's request does not fall into what you would describe.
Can I
Go
make a
ahead.
suggestion? And I do think that our office should be involved in drafting this, just so we make sure it's got the adequate information, because the FPPC's 21-day promise is contingent on us providing all the requisite information that they need. But because I would be making the request on behalf of Councilmember Garpetian and on behalf of Councilmember Najarian and Councilmember Brahman, I would run those letters by each of them, so that if they have comments on the individual letters, happy to include those as we work through it. And then once the letters are out, I'll send it to the entire council.
So
that way
if-
we don't have a Brown Act violation.
Okay, but if you state something and then Councilmember Najarian or Garpetian are arguing that that's not their interpretation of it, but then you don't agree with their interpretation of it, where do we land with this letter?
Well, hopefully we won't get there. I mean, I really feel like it's a pretty straightforward process. I'm presenting the information about the project that's been in our staff reports. I'm presenting the information about how the applicable code provisions that might be at issue, and then asking that PPC to opine on it.
I'll withdraw my motion. I'd made a motion, I'll withdraw it.
Okay.
What was your motion?
The motion that we,
Your-
not
your-
the motion to
Your
continue.
microphone's off.
Right. So do I have a motion to continue?
It was made already by Councilmember Garpetian.
And I second.
Okay. May we have roll call?
Councilmembers Brotman,
No.
Garpetian,
Yes.
Kasakian,
And this is a motion to continue this item until, yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Mayor Asatryan.
Yes. Sorry, folks who came for this item. Next item?
It's irresponsible.
Yes, next item will be hearings.
Is what?
We have a hearing?
Do we have a hearing?
No.
No, no,
No,
oh,
no.
okay. Next item's oral communications.
Well, next item is actually discussion of your future agenda
Oh, I'm
request.
sorry, yes.
Yes, it's true. Next item will be item 12, discussion of council members' future agenda requests. A, Mayor Asatryan's request for a report on partnership with the International Kids Festival for 2 events.
So I had brought this forth last week. I don't know why I needed to bring this, because I also recognize that they had submitted a proposal and request to staff and included me in it. Just like very similar to how the Alex brings it forth. So I know it's right around the corner. This is the same organization that hosted the International Kids Festival. They were asking for us to be partners and for additional discounts. In that proposal, that went to me and staff. So I'm just trying to get, I was told that the city council needs to vote for this. And so I'm just trying to get this on the agenda before the pumpkin patch.
All right, Mayor Asatryan, the reason this is on the agenda because your request was for a partnership,
Right.
which is different than a discount for nonprofits. We do have a set discount rate for nonprofits that we can certainly apply for the International Kids Festival.
So they submitted a request for more than the 25% because the recent increases in fees have more than doubled what they paid just back in June.
Right.
So they're asking for additional, in that request that came in, they're asking for both an additional discount at 50%, as well as for us to basically partner or sponsor, however we do it, that we would also use our mediums to disseminate information about the pumpkin patch, and the International Kids Festival. So,
Yeah, understood, Madam Mayor, but sponsorship takes this to an entirely different level than applying a discount to nonprofits. I think I saw the request today or yesterday that it came in, so let me take a look at it and reconvene with our Community Service and Parks Director and see what we can do.
okay, so so I'm gonna, just in case.
Yeah, just in case.
This is the same group, like I said last week, that put together the International Kids Festival. They're looking to do a pumpkin patch, and another International Kids Festival. Again, they're looking for additional discounts because, and they are a nonprofit. The first event that they put together brought in thousands to Verdugo Park, and I think whatever we can do to support such events would be great. I would need 3 votes for this to be agendized, just in case. Okay. Do I have support from my colleagues?
Yeah, that's fine. I'll support that.
Yeah, okay. Hopefully it doesn't need to come to that, but can I have a motion and a second?
I'll move it.
Placed on the agenda.
Is there a second? Second. Roll call?
Council members Brotman,
Yes.
Garpetian,
Yes.
Kazakian,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Mayor Asatryan.
Yes. And what's next?
Next is oral communications. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Council may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. The city manager may refer the matter to the appropriate department for investigation and report. We have 3 cards at the moment.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if there are some calls coming in,
So let's
but
take the first speaker, and then
sounds good.
we'll take the last speaker card or call by the end of the first speaker.
Okay. Our first speaker is Corey DeCola.
Hello, good evening, council members, mayor, and city staff. My name is Corey DeCola. It sure was a hot week in Glendale, wasn't it? In fact, according to the European Climate Service, August 2024 was the hottest August on record for the entire planet. Again, that's 2 years in a row. It's scary to think that we're just going to keep seeing headlines like that. Another year, another record high temperature. And when you think about it, every other issue we're discussing, all the urban planning, all the economic stimulus or budget cutting, all the permitting or regulation or deregulation, all of it that seems so important to us today will shrink to utter insignificance if we continue to ignore and do nothing about runaway climate change. None of it will matter if we burn out and make our habitat unlivable. But it doesn't have to be that way. It's not too late to change course. In fact, we could see this as an opportunity. An opportunity to act now and decisively in ways we have already begun to debate. Yes, like the creation and expansion of protected bicycle lanes, something that so obviously promotes public safety and encourages people to choose alternatives to driving, which clearly adds to our climate problems that it seems absurd we have to debate it. But also in ways we haven't begun to discuss or even think of. Imagine, Glendale could actually become an example for other cities to follow in creating green spaces, livable green spaces, instead of more paved surfaces that trap heat and exasperate summers like the one we're experiencing now. In encouraging renewable, clean sources of energy for both public and private consumption, solar and wind as the most obvious examples. In working together to show others how we can bridge our differences in the face of this common threat. Here's a crazy idea just by the way of example. What if instead of just adding a bike lane to Brand Avenue, what if we made several blocks of it exclusively dedicated to pedestrian or bicycle traffic? No cars at all. And we could add more trees and have sheltered walkways with solar panels on the roofs of those shelters. We would generate headlines. We would promote our local businesses. We could become a destination for locals and tourists from around the world. The only thing preventing us from working together towards these kinds of common dreams is ourselves. We have to choose. We have to get out of our own way and prioritize this collective action for the common good. Thank you for letting me share this dream of mine with you tonight, and I look forward to sharing more with you in the future. Thank you for your time this evening, Council.
Thank you. Our next public comment is by Ellen Durham.
Mayor Satri and members of the council, I'm Alan Durham. During the last city council meeting on August 27th, a resident spoke about the August 15th community forum and HPC meeting devoted to the proposed Selvas de Verdugo Historic District under the new streamlined process for historic districts. I found most of his statements about this meeting, which I did attend, it was a 5-hour meeting, very misleading. He stated that the HPC motion passed on August 15th, quote, designated Verdugo Woodlands as a historic district. Quote, this is false. Only the city council can designate a neighborhood as a historic district. The HPC can only make recommendations. He also criticized a, quote, overstepping historic preservation commission that lacks proper regulation and due process, quote. He also claimed that there are, quote, no checks and balances on the HPC, quote. He also claimed that the HPC decision happened that evening behind, quote, closed doors. Yes, closed doors just like this meeting. The doors are closed, they're not locked, people are free to come in and out during the entire meeting. You know, it was an obvious effort to try to discredit that whole meeting and process, which I find very disturbing. People have the right to oppose historic districts, but they don't have the right to twist and misrepresent information and what happened at the meeting. And that meeting is archived and available for anyone to watch if they're willing to spend the 5 hours. He also complained that opponents to the historic district at the meeting were given short shrift during the community forum and the HPC meeting that followed. That meeting, again, lasted over 5 hours. During the community forum, all attendees, pro and con, had ample time at the microphone and they weren't limited in time during that forum, to express their views. They also had an additional 3 minutes to speak during the formal HPC meeting that followed. The HPC that evening simply decided that the formal application for Verdugo Woodlands was substantive and solid enough to move to the next step in a very lengthy process for historic districts. That was only the 3rd step out of like 10. The next step is for City Council to consider conducting a survey of the proposed historic district. The HPC that evening did not overstep its authority. The HPC does not propose historic districts. Interested residents have to conduct a great deal of research and prepare a lengthy and detailed application as the first step. The HPC's responsibility at that point is to determine whether the application historically is appropriate and significant enough to move forward. At the end of the residents' comments at the August 27th City Council meeting, Mayor Satrian stated, quote, people that have homes can wake up one morning and they can't do anything to their home. This is totally false. In a historic district, the restrictions basically apply to the exterior front of homes. It doesn't prohibit anything being done on the interior. You can add an addition to the back of the home. You can add an ADU. You can replace windows. You can even add a second story. Yes, it's subject to review, but owners who think they can do anything whatever to their homes are wrong. Any changes to their homes are currently subject to design review by city staff. A historic district basically shifts that review from design review to historic preservation. Historic districts do not freeze a house or a neighborhood in time. It simply tries to maintain the existing character of a neighborhood. And if Mayor Satrian doesn't understand what historic districts do or don't, I recommend she watch Jay Platt's presentation on August 15th. Thank you.
I wish I could say that I appreciate your recommendation, but I don't. I think your comments were taken out of context, and I really don't appreciate that, sir. Next.
Our final public comment is by Bibi Rose. Bibi, you have 5 minutes. Come on up.
Hello.
Hi, student counselors. My name is Bibiana Rose, and also I would like to appreciate how the soccer teams from the schools are being really extra good for our school. But I was reminding, if we can have a mini soccer team and a mini cheer squad, because sometimes the little kids feel doubt and we don't want to wait for 4th grade, 5th grade. We just want to know if we can have that here in our community, and to every schools, and also in every elementary school in America. And also, we want to support others and be really good to one another. When we are playing any sport, we have to be really careful and follow the rules from the community, and also we gotta be respectful and make the right choices too. We also have to help other people when they're not safe, or safe when it's something happening. For an example, like if someone gets hurt and their head gets hurt from the soccer ball, we always help them from giving them a hand and getting them another chance. We also help them from being good and kind to one another, and we also had to be really careful. And also, I don't want to see my friends at summer camp and winter so I was wondering, if we can all be as a community and be helpful, we had to be together and be politeful. And also, we gotta be really kind, respectful, and responsible. And also, we gotta be respectful and kindful and treated to one other and another other. So,
Mommy, do you want to?
Oh, thank you guys so much for letting my daughter speak. It was a hard no when we asked the school, so I think that's why she's doing the pretty please. My daughter was in the height of pre-K right when COVID hit, and she would look out the window and say, "Get better, Earth, I want to be out there." And we lived here for as long as she was a baby. The same stairs that she runs down, she walked up crawling. So we love our community and schools. And we really had a great time integrating after COVID. And I think for health reasons as well, and also getting to know our friends a little bit better after that. We appreciate doing the summer camps and stuff like that, where we participate with STAR and the police department as well. We love that. To get healthy again and kind of meet our friends and not just have to see them summer breaks and stuff. My daughter said, "I really have to go and ask the mayor about that." So we didn't know what we had to do to implement it. If we have to fundraise, I'm here to do that. I'd love to help. Or a petition. We don't really know the rules, but we're going to be kindful about it.
Thank you.
thank you.
Is there anything more you'd like to add?
No.
Is there anything else you'd like to say? Please feel that you're not in trouble. It's okay to ask.
Oh, how old are you? How old?
7.
7? Great.
7, sir.
All right. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
It's okay. You did.
No, I think I'm okay.
And sweetheart.
Well, I would say that I would definitely say you're one of the most courageous little girls I've seen, and I'm so grateful that you're here today. And I hope that you come back every time you have an opinion.
Thank you, ma'am.
Oh. And I think maybe after our meeting, I would love to chat with you on the details of what you're looking for. Okay?
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here.
We really appreciate that.
I think that the program we have sponsored through the city and our schools, which allows for the sports to be played, I would certainly be supportive of seeing how it could be expanded to the younger grades. So I want to thank you for coming and speaking to us. And honestly, you put such a smile on my face after such a long day. I want you to come back and end all our council meetings every Tuesday. I know it's really late and past your bedtime probably, but man, what a way to end the council meeting with putting smiles on all our faces. Thank you.
We also just wanted to say too, we watch every week and it's so interesting. We do, we watch every week, and sometimes my mom goes like, or my daughter goes, Mom, is everything okay? And I go, okay. It's like it's really interesting that it's made available for the community, because for me, I'm a single mom, and I'm not saying that in a way that, but I just feel like I do have like a family, and being able to actually just see what's going on and feel like more comfortable when you go out by yourself. You don't really feel by yourself because you know what's going on. So I feel like if there's anyone watching this or feeling like they're alone, they're definitely not. There's a space and a time to be here and be a family. So I've been here for 6 years. I remember Officer Copian and Officer Mercado looked at me when I first got here, and man, I was like a mess. And I was like, if you're still here in 5 years, you got this, Mom. So I was like, I did it. It made me feel really good as a mom.
Thank you for also bringing her. Thank you.
Thank you. We really appreciate it. He's gonna say, go Wildcats.
Go Wildcats.
The Cerritos Wildcats. Thank you so much.
All right.
Next
Anyone?
is adjournment.
All right. Do we have adjournment?
To adjourn. Second.